Welcome to the Monday night session of CP1 for September 7th, 2020 for our asynchronous class, as today is Labor Day. So instead of having to have the requirement of being in class, I am recording it for you, and this you found in Canvas. And so we're going to get started. We are going to go from 4:30 to 6. You can pause the video at any time in order to get the content, rewind, or whatever it is you need to do, okay? So our schedule, as always, starting this evening and the rest of the weeks that we're together, will be from 4:30 to 5. You're going to be jigsawing in a team, although tonight you won't be doing that because we're not together. The Distance Learning Playbook Module 2 is what you're going to be taking a look at tonight, and I'll share that with you in a moment. And from 5 to 5:30 is going to be our TPA content. We're going to be going over step 1, so you're going to need to have those documents ready to go, and I'll tell you what those are soon. And then 5:30 to 6 would be our normal question time, so I'm going to place a document on the table once we get to that point for you to type in questions so that I can answer them in real time in a shared document. So for the virtual classroom tonight, here is the link for the bit.ly that you will need. FAQ 120 CP1 S1 Monday. So that stands for Fall Quad 1 2020 CP1 Session 1 Monday. Okay, so and you will have access to all of this. So if we look around the room, the things that you have here again are the attendance. Please make sure you click on the attendance to log that you are here today. That is the only way I check attendance, okay? And then what I have here is also a live binder tutorial. I'm going to tell you about that. I've added a saving documents live binder tutorial. Here is SMS for the document on what you need to do if you are an intern. Is still there. The link is still here for the printer and for all the same documents on the table. So these things you're going to need this evening, and so just be sure you have access to all of those. So next, what we're going to do now is we're going to head into our reading portion of virtual teaching from the Distance Learning Playbook from Fisher, Fry, and Hattie. And here are the directions of what you're going to do this evening. So you're going to be starting the timer linked to the clock, which is right here. If I show you what that looks like, there is a 30-minute timer. You're going to pull that up, and that'll give you the countdown. Obviously, this one has been going since I opened it last, so I need to rewind it. And then start for 30 minutes for the countdown. I'm going to pause that. And then, secondly, I'm going to read Module 2 of the Distance Learning Playbook. Now, the wonderful thing about this book is that, excuse me, is that it's a really easy read. So skim over it, look over it, highlight it. It's not very long. It'll probably take you 10-15 minutes at the most to read it. The link is here on the read link here in the Word, as well as if you click on the object Distance Learning Playbook right here. So you're going to read it. And then you're going to watch the videos on the iPads on the table. So I have a bunch of different videos that are also QR. They have QR codes in the book, so you can use your QR code reader if you'd rather do that. But there are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 very short videos to give examples of content that you're reading. For example, setting up the classroom rules, which aren't really what they should be anymore. They should be what you're going to do to make learning the best you can be in the classroom. Explaining what coronavirus is to little ones. This is for TK kids. And just going through the process of all the things that are talked about in the Module 2. Once you've watched those, then you're going to respond to the prompt, which is on this document right here. You're going to click on the link. And the directions say respond to the prompt to reflect on takeaways from the content linked to the document on the table. So you're going to click on this link. You're going to come to this document, type your name, your student ID, and here's your response. So what are the 2 takeaways from the reading of Module 2 or the videos that you will use immediately in your virtual classroom? And that this is also considered required for classroom attendance. So you'll type your response here, and what you'll see in real time is what other people have said as well. And then I'll get a chance to take a look and see what you took as the most important. And then lastly, it's just a reminder that this is required for class attendance. So what you're going to do right now, you're going to click on the clock. you're going to pause my video and you're going to follow these steps. And when you're complete in 30 minutes at about 4:30 or whenever that our normal time would be, whenever you're done in 30 minutes, you'll come back and you'll start and click play and head on into the next section of class. So go ahead now, start your timer and begin your reading and follow the directions. All right, hopefully that time was effective for you and you gathered some incredible ideas and support of, just taking ideas from other people and how they're handling this virtual time of teaching. So make sure you have responded in that prompt, and now let's move on. So what we're going to do next, this is our content section of class, which will last for 30 minutes. And what you're going to need, because we're heading into step 1, and as I mentioned last week, you have got to be completely focused, no distractions as much as possible. However, the beauty of this is you can pause it if you've got a distraction and come back to it as you need to. But the things you're going to need as we step into step 1 is your Cycle 1 assessment guide. I have it on the table for you here as well. Click on the link, you'll go to the folder, pick your multiple subject, because we are the multiple subject group for Monday night, so you want to pull up that multiple subject assessment guide. And then the digital version of the CP1 planner is here, and then your compass map for step 1, which is also in the back of your planner. So some of you have come to my doorstep to pick up copies, physical copies, so then you might want to have a highlighter, sticky notes, whatever else it is, your pen ready to go to write on all of these documents if that's what you have and that's how you learn best. Or you can annotate in these digital versions. So you need your assessment guide, which is this one here, your CP planner, which is this here, and then your compass map, and then you're going to need to have a tab open for Canvas Classroom. We're going to take a look at that too as well. We're going to make sure and go through that this evening, so you know what to turn in and what each of these pieces mean within Canvas. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'm going to pull up, I'm going to actually pull down the first portion of this, and what I'm going to ask you to look at first is the step 1 plan. Okay, so remember you need to think of this in 4 steps of TPA. And what I want to be sure that you understand is that in order to get credit for CP, for Clinical Practice Seminar, you have to complete the entire Cycle 1 TPA, okay, from beginning to end. I am talking you through the entire thing. I'm training you, front-loading information, and then you're going to do it then. So right now what I'm doing is I'm explaining what you need to do, and we're breaking step 1 into 2 weeks, this week and next week. So this week you're going to begin step 1. You're going to learn what to do. You're going to go into Canvas, look at the information you've got there. I'm going to go over that, complete what you are required to do for the portion of step 1, and then you're going to upload it and submit it. That does not mean though that you've submitted it finally into Pearson. So there's going to be 2 submissions. You're going to be submitting it into Canvas for credit, and everything has to be submitted, your complete TPA in the parts as requested. Or you cannot get credit for CP. So that's the first step, because we're practicing, we're learning, we're figuring out how to do it and refining it, so that then in week 7 of CP, then you will take it all together and upload it into Pearson. Okay, so you're really uploading it twice, 1 for credit in CP in Canvas, and 2 in Pearson in week 7 when we're all completely done. Okay, so let's take a look at step 1, cycle 1. Here are the steps. You've got plan, teach and assess will be step 2, reflect step 3, and apply step 4. So this week we're looking at plan. We're planning this week, and the specific vocabulary that you need to be very aware of and that you've got in your assessment guide and in the back of your planner are these particular ones that may be new to you. Assets. This is the word that they use and we are expected to use when we talk about the needs of students. We're not talking about the gaps. We're not talking about what they don't have. We're not talking about how they don't know this and they don't know that. We're talking about what their assets are. Okay, and what they still need to know. So you're going to be using that word. Same thing with funds of knowledge. What are the funds of knowledge my students have? like their background knowledge. Okay, be very familiar with this. Look in your glossary. If you need to pause the video now and go ahead and open to the glossary, please do that. We'll take a look at these two in a moment. Then there's higher order thinking skills. That's going to be important throughout this whole cycle. Be sure you understand what those are. Universal Design for Learning, that's the UDL. Be sure you're aware of what that is and how it all is used in this process. And then inclusive learning environment. That is the key to this whole process, is that you are creating an environment that is inclusive and accessible for all. So let's take a look really quickly at the glossary as I scroll. Okay, here we go. So we are going to go to, why don't you take your guide and go to page 33. So here's some of the top important words, academic words that you're going to need to know because you need to use them the same way they use them. So we've got 504 plan, academic language development, accommodation, adaptations, annotations, assessment, and here's asset, that word that was on the compass map. So it's an asset-based approach, focuses on the strengths. So that's important. They are going to, lower your score if you start talking about things they don't know. They're behind in this, they're behind in that. You need to use an asset-based approach to focus on their strengths. So it views diversity in thought, culture, and traits as a positive assets. Teachers and students alike are valued for what they bring to the classroom rather than being characterized by what they may need to know or what they lack, and therefore are considered assets. So they could include diversity in thinking, which brings in actually higher order skills, higher order thinking skills, culture, their traits, intelligences, as well as unique experiences or skills. So be very sure, highlight, underline, whatever it is to help you with that. Assistive technology, these are CELT scores, another set of words, content-specific pedagogy, deep learning, deficit thinking. Yeah, we don't want to be using deficit thinking. The next word I want to share with you, and be sure you have highlighted, or the words that here, let me click back. I'm blanking now on them. Okay, so higher order thinking skills, funds of knowledge, that's the next one. This is one that often people get wrong. Assets and funds of knowledge are two words that you need to be sure that you understand. So here's funds of knowledge. It's defined by researchers Mall, Amante, Neff, and Gonzalez, that refers to the historically accumulated and culturally developed bodies of knowledge and skills essential for household or individual functioning and well-being. So when teachers shed their role of teacher and expert and instead take on a new role as learner, they can come to know their students and the families of their students in new and distinct ways. With this new knowledge, they can begin to see that the households of their students contain rich cultural and cognitive resources, and that these resources can and should be used in their classroom in order to provide culturally responsive and meaningful lessons that tap students' prior knowledge. Information that teaches learning about their students in this process is considered the students' funds of knowledge. Okay, very important. Higher order thinking skills. The short version is considered HOTS, the acronym. So it's a popular American education reform that distinguishes critical thinking skills from lower order learning outcomes, such as those attained by rote memorization, and it pushes it forward and makes it more rigorous by using analysis. It's a synthesis, evaluation, interpretation, and transfer. So it's based on various taxonomies of learning, such as Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, so that's one of the items. So I think I'll stop there in those. Great. So those are the vocabulary words you need to be sure you understand. Okay, so what do you need for this step? And like I said, we're going to do it in 2 weeks. We're going to do a portion of it today, this week, and a portion of it next week. And then you're going to move into videotaping your lesson. Okay, so step 1 is all about planning your lesson plan. So the first thing you're going to do, and tonight and this week, part A is what we're focusing on. That is the the focus this week is Part A. So you are going to be looking at what are the assets and the learning needs of the students in my class. So your class currently right now, as a multiple subject teacher, you've got 25 third graders, whatever it might be, 30 sixth graders, second graders, whatever it might be. You need to gather information on their assets and learning needs. And it's going to give you, we're going to go to the assessment guide and go into more detail. But you've got to find ways to gather that information. It may be going into school when it's what's an allowed time and looking through their files, using, gathering data that you have access to through your school. There's different ways you can do that to understand what their assets are when it comes to reading and language, when it comes to math, all of those things, so you know what they come to the table with. And you're going to then also pick 3 focus students, okay? And we're going to go over this in a moment, but your goal is to gather information of your whole class, and more specifically, 3 focus students. You need to pick those focus students today if you haven't yet. So you have focus student number 1, focus student number 2, and focus student number 3. And focus student 1 is a student with an English language learner. If you do not have a designated actual EL learner and they're all non-ELs, you need to pick someone who you feel is still learning the language the most. If you're in kindergarten, they are not designated yet, so you're going to need to just pick one that you think is struggling the most. Focus student 2 is a student with an IEP or a 504. And if you don't have one of those students, you need to pick someone who is on the lower end of scores in math or reading, whichever one you pick to do for your TPA. Okay. As a reminder, when you log in for the first time to schedule and start looking through Pearson for the TPA cycle 1, you have to pick to do math or reading. So what you need to decide now is, am I going to do math or reading? This first one, cycle 1, I would pick the subject you are less confident in, because cycle 2 is going to have a lot more in-depth 4 to 5 lessons, assessment using data. So say you pick math this time, then you're picking information about these students in math in general. So, and the third student is socioeconomically disadvantaged or behavior management issues, a student such as that. Okay, and I'll show you where that is in the assessment guide. Then next week, we're going to look at part B and C and D. So what you're going to do then is you're going to build your lesson plan. So right now what we're doing this week is we are building the background, learning about our students, and then you're going to write your lesson plan in part B, and then you're going to write in part C a rationale, a template. In the template, you're going to write your rationale as to why you did the lesson plan. In part D, you're going to list any related instructional resources and materials that you used in the lesson. So in part B, you're going to be uploading your UDL lesson plan template, okay? And you're going to actually be using Point Loma's UDL lesson plan. I have one for you. It can't have the Point Loma logo on it, and it will be there for you next week to use. Down here at the bottom, the rubrics are how you are scored, and it's these 4 circles here. You've got focus student 1 they're going to assess you on, focus student 2, your lesson plan, and focus student 3. And we'll take a look at those rubrics. Those are all very, very important. And so you have 4 rubrics that you're going to be assessed on, in which you want a 3 or higher to get a passing score of 19 out of 40. Because there are 8 rubrics, 5 points total each, so that's where we get the 40 points, so you need 19 total. And this is just reminding you to use higher order thinking skills. Try to avoid lower order thinking skills like memorization. These are questions to ask yourself. So you've finished your templates. You finished part A, part B, part C, part D. And now to check yourself, go through and ask yourself these questions. For example, the first one, does my lesson plan include manageable and appropriate goals? Take a look and see if it does. Have I shown how these goals clearly build on students' prior knowledge? And so on. Okay, I'm not going to read through all of them. Keeping in mind when you're writing this lesson plan, this could also serve as one of your formal lesson plans, which I would highly recommend using it for both to save time. Just keep in mind that it will have to be math or reading because the submission has to be one or the other, math or reading. It can't be social studies or science. But you could be teaching science through math standards, okay, that you're using for your TPA. So I know sometimes this gets confusing. You're like, I don't know which lesson plan I'm using. You can use them for both. For your formal observation, remember there are 4 you need through the quad that your supervisor's coming to observe you. And your TPA for this cycle, you only need 1 lesson. So you could use the lesson plan and the recorded lesson for both. So keep that in mind, okay? And that is step 1. So now what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to the assessment guide. And I'd like you all to pause the video if you need to get it out for a moment. And I'm going to take you through the assessment guide just to step 1. This beginning information is extremely helpful. It's going to tell you, you know, the basics and the overview, and then it's going to get into fine detail. So step 1 is planning. So that's what we're doing this week. We're gathering information about one class of TK through for you 6, identify content-specific and ELD learning goals as appropriate, and develop a lesson plan based on the applicable CS frameworks, okay, CCSS frameworks, and your content-specific pedagogy for that subject. Your lesson must focus on either literacy or math. You may integrate other subjects into the lesson, but you need to describe the assets and learning needs of the class as a whole and for those 3 focus students. Okay, we're going to skip past 2. Here are the focus students. I am on page 3. Focus student 1, a student identified as an English learner. It'll define it. It'll take you to the glossary. Focus student 2, a student identified by the district or the school with an individualized education plan, that's an IEP, a 504 plan, or a student identified as gifted and talented, or GATE. Focus student 3 is a student whose life experiences either inside or outside of school may result in a need for additional academic or emotional support, and whose behavior in class catches your attention. It could be someone with behavioral issues that needs the intervention specialist, possibly a student in foster care, homeless, any of those kinds of things that might specify one of your students that impacts them in their academics. All right. So all of this, every time you see a green box, it's extremely important. So I would recommend that you read through every single section of step 1 and the preface before you get to step 1, because I can't sit here and read it all to you for time's sake. So you need to read every green box especially, and every other bit of information as well. This breaks down what literacy, their definition of literacy, and what you're going to be doing, what you can be doing during that lesson, or math if you choose math. On page 5, this evidence table is really, really helpful. We're in step 1. So if we take a look at that, it says step 1 plan, and that templates are provided, including a sample lesson plan format. However, you are going to be uploading the UDL lesson template that we use at Point Loma. Okay, so here's what you need to do, and this is all the same things that you just saw on that compass map. Okay, so remember, we're not doing the whole step 1 this week. We're doing a portion of it. We're doing part A, the written narrative, which is getting to know your students, and it needs to be no more than 9 pages. So what we're doing this week is you're gathering contextual information, including the students' assets and learning needs for the whole class and for each of the 3 focus students. And we're not heading off into anywhere else yet. So the first thing we're doing is gathering contextual information, and part A, written narrative, getting to know your students. Okay, so it's telling you, here's the cycle, here's what you need to do, and here's for each bullet what needs to be submitted. So we're just doing gathering contextual information and your 3 students, and we're writing the written narrative for part A, okay, which is also template A. Okay, and we'll move on to the next portions next week. So here's the breakdown of step 1 plan. Complete the following step 1 planning activities prior to completing steps 2 through 4. They're just saying do them in order, right? So choose one class of students as the focus for instructional cycle 1. Verify permission from the teachers, other adults, and families of the students who will appear in the video recordings for instructional cycle 1. And I actually have an update on that later on in class that I'll give to you. In the green, like I said, green is very important. Follow all district policies regarding video recording of individuals. Candidates are responsible for verifying and, if necessary, obtaining appropriate permissions from all individuals who appear in the video clips submitted. Candidates and students must be visible in the recordings. And to this, again, I'm going to say, when you record a Zoom, you're not recording the Zoom in the computer. You're having your camera behind you on a tripod or someone holding it to record you from behind so your head can be seen and then the computer in front of that. Okay, so be sure you do that. And I'll go over some of the video recording updates from Dr. Jill Hamilton Bunch towards the end of class. All right, what you're focusing on this week is getting to know your students. So here are the directions. Consult with your master, mentor, or supervisory teacher, with additional school personnel, with families as needed to develop your understanding of students' assets and learning needs. Review student work and available assessment or survey data, and talk with and/or observe students to learn about the class's range of assets, including academic strengths and learning needs. You will use this information to establish content-specific learning goals, including California English Language Development Standards, ELD standards as appropriate. For the literacy or mathematics lesson, you will plan and teach for cycle 1. All right, next is a green box, very important, so we're going to read that. Gather information about students' assets and learning needs in a professional and appropriate manner that protects students' privacy. This is very important. While you might collect contextual information by talking with students, only do so if supportive and appropriate for the developmental level of the student. Personal student information must be vetted through master, mentor, or supervising teacher. If you have questions about the types of information that are available in a public school setting about students' assets or learning needs, seek guidance from your school program and the school site administrators or teachers in which you are conducting your student teaching. So just ask me if you need ideas, talk to your principal, talk to your mentor, your supervisor, and we can all give you ideas of who to contact and how to gather that information, okay? You're going to provide the following information about your whole class, their assets and learning needs, the classroom context, and each of the 3 focus students using the template provided. So this is how you're going to fill out the narrative, and I'll show you the template in a minute. So the first section of the narrative is the description of students' assets and learning needs. So A, you're going to type in what is the prior academic knowledge related to the specific content you plan to teach. B, what is the English language proficiency levels of the students? Then C, what's the cultural and linguistic resources and funds of knowledge? D, what are the prior experiences and interests related to the content in literacy or math, whichever one you pick. Stick with the same one, remember. And then important green box, standard English learners are students whose native language is English and whose mastery of the standard English language or academic English is limited due to their use of non-standard English. Okay, they're an English learner. Part 2 of the template, the narrative, is contextual information for the class. You're going to write in grade level. You're going to respond with what the grade level or levels are in your class that you've chosen. Content area, classroom setting, if it's face-to-face, online, hybrid, how are you holding class, resources and materials, the number of students in this breakdown here, break it down by number. Include a note if IEP 504 and GATE are not applicable for your students given their age, for example, TK through 3 classroom. That's not usually assessed yet, okay? Then part F, dual language setting, if applicable. If you're not dual language, then you can just say not applicable in this instance. And then it's going to go into your focus students. So you're going to need to now give a description of your 3 focus students' assets and learning needs. So you need to have chosen your 3 different individuals who meet the criteria below. All right, let's read the green box here. To protect the privacy of the 3 different focus students, refer to these students throughout your submitted evidence as Focus Student 1, FS1, Focus Student 2, FS2, and Focus Student 3, FS3. So from here on out, I'm going to say that FS1, FS2, FS3, and that's how you should respond to them in your writing. You're not going to say their name, and they don't need to know that they're one of those students either. Don't tell them. They should not know, okay, that you're focused in on them as a focus student. And also remember, don't use an actual school name. It all needs to be anonymous. The names of other adults in the classroom who support the students, don't leave those names, and don't give the names of any students in the evidence you submit for Cycle 1. All right, for your Focus Student 1, choose a district-identified English learner. This can be an EL learner at any CELT or LPAC level. CELT is the old test. You probably have LPAC levels now. I think it's the 3rd year we've been using that. If you've only designated English learners in your class, you may select one of them or select a student who needs support for his or her language. Okay, this is the question I'm going to get the most. What if I don't have an EL designated learner? This is what you do. You may select one of them or select a student who needs support for his or her language development who has been redesignated. Okay, you can use a redesignated English learner. So you need the current proficiency in reading, writing, and speaking, listening in English, and mastery of the primary language. You need prior academic knowledge related to the specific content that you plan to teach. What is the social identity? So what is the student self-concept derived from a perceived membership in a social group that is evident in the classroom interactions? And these links, blue links here, obviously, when you go on them in the digital version, are going to take you to the glossary to specifically tell you what that means. You need the cultural and linguistic resources and funds of knowledge. What are the prior experiences and interests of this student as they relate to what you plan to teach them? And what are the developmental considerations, like where are they at socially, emotionally, typical, are they a typical or an atypical child development? And once again, the glossary, go to it so you can use those definitions appropriately. So Focus 2 is a student taught in general education classroom, but that's not pulled away, but who the district has identified as having a disability with an IEP or a 504 plan, or a student identified for GATE who will be participating in the lesson. Here we go again. If there are no identified students in your classroom, select a student who has recently been referred for specialized support or who requires additional learning support in the general education setting. Also could be that student that's done in 5 minutes when everybody else takes 30, right? So that could be someone who's considered more of a GATE student and they need more challenge. Okay, so that's something you would think of. So you need to include information about their learning challenge. How are they identified? Or are they having a need for greater instructional challenge through GATE? Multi-tiered system of support, MTSS, is probably in full force at your school, I would think, most schools. So you can find out what the focus of the 504 plan or the MTSS support is for this student. B, prior academic knowledge related to the content. What do they know before you plan to teach it? What is their social identity, cultural linguistic resources, prior experiences and interests, developmental considerations, and what are assistive technologies that need to be used and are appropriate, if there are any. So it's all the same content as Focus 1 student, except for the assistive technologies, all right? All right, green box, FS2. When choosing your FS2 in a transitional kindergarten or primary grades classroom where students have yet to be identified, that's generally TK through 3, select a student who has been identified for support through the MTSS system, okay? So prior to being designated, when they've been recommended for MTSS system of support, okay? So they're someone who you're recommending that needs help, who has recently been referred for evaluation or is struggling in the content area that is the focus of the lesson, okay? Here we go, important green boxes. All right, the final student, Focus 3. Choose a student whose life experience, either inside or outside of the school, may result in a need for additional academic or emotional support, and whose behavior in class catches your attention. So, for example, that does not participate, falls asleep in class, remains silent, acts out, or demands attention. Life experiences may include, but are not limited to challenges in the home, community, or school as a result of discrimination, bullying, illness, loss of parents, divorce, trauma, homelessness, poverty, incarceration, or as a result of needs as a standard English learner who is a migrant, an immigrant, or an undocumented student, or a student in foster care. So it's going to ask you the same information here, their life experiences, prior academic knowledge, social identity, cultural and linguistic resources, prior experiences, and developmental considerations. So the same thing there. Okay, so you're going to stop at page 9. Next week, we're moving on to the lesson plan. So you need to know this portion of the assessment guide very well. You should have already read your assessment guide from front to back, or at least reviewed it very closely so that you know how this all falls in the whole big picture. Okay, so we just went over step 1, which is this portion you're responsible for today, part A. Okay, so that's what you're going to work on here. In your CP handbook, we're going to start taking a look at, have you written your lesson plans in, your summarized lesson plans in. Here we need to be typing in, or writing in, the month, September, and the dates, okay, and any helpful links and notes. This is all going to help you in coordinating your TPA as well as your student teaching with your lesson plans, okay? So I want you to write all over this, write in it, wherever it is. I have plenty waiting at my door for you if you haven't come and gotten one yet. Check off if you're traditional or an intern. What are the goals for this month, for September? You're going to be template A, template B, C, D, E, F, and G. I think that's through September. We'd have to look. So look and see up till the end of September, what are the goals in Canvas I have to complete. Dates I need to remember. One of the most important dates is week 7. That's the week you're going to be turning in your submission to Pearson. And we don't have class that week, so that will be important for you to know. Important notes. Do I know my scoring rubrics? Have I read the performance assessment guide? Have I planned for steps 1 through 4 for the peer review? And we'll be doing that later. At week 5, have I reviewed the cycle 1 example? Do I understand barriers in the UDL and find the templates in Pearson, which you actually have access to them all in Canvas? You're welcome. There is an example of a cycle 1 submission, and I'm going to show that to you in a moment when we head into Canvas, okay? As well as show you where the templates are. The scoring rubrics, that brings to mind the most important page here we're going to skip through step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. There's step 4, apply, and then after that we're going to find our rubrics, and here we go. Here's rubric 1.1. There are 4 rubrics, as the compass map said. You see how down here it says how many rubrics do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're going to have 4 rubrics, and 3 of them are going to be for your focus students and 1's going to be for your lesson plan. So this first one is, how does the candidate propose learning goals connect with prior knowledge and define specific outcomes for students? So, and how do proposed learning activities, instructional and grouping strategies support, engage, and challenge all students? So that's step 1. Let's take a look at the second one. Do you see how now this is focus student 1? So we haven't written the lesson plan yet, but when you write the lesson plan, your goal is to get a 3 or above. Okay, so you look at this, and these are the exact same questions that are on this bottom portion here. I've broken them down into questions. Okay, so it's the same thing as you see here. So you're shooting for a level 3. But for you, what you're working on this week, these are the rubrics that are going to score what you write in the narrative for template A. So the essential question is, how does the candidate plan instruction using knowledge of FS1's assets and learning needs to support meaningful engagement with the content-specific learning goals? So if you read 3, this is how you're going to get a 3. Do I provide appropriate adaptations? Have I planned supports for student learning that's clear and built on the student's assets and learning needs? Is the candidate provided with a cogent rationale and plan for how language adaptations and accommodations are used during the lesson that encourages FS1's progress towards meeting learning goals? Then you can, go up another point by doing these items, which is usually adding to it, which level 5 is always the UDL. Did you use a UDL and complete that whole process with UDL? Level 4 is usually adding in one little extra piece, which in this one is candidate plans opportunities for FS1 to participate in different modes of communication. So in order to get a 4, you're looking at different modes of communication, not doing just one during that lesson, but several during the lessons to access content needed to meet learning goals. Okay, so that's your FS1. You're going to have the same for FS2. Here's how you get a 3 and a 4 and a 5. UDL is 5. And rubric 4, the last rubric for step 1, focus student 3, which is student with academic emotional support needs due to life experiences. This is how you get a 3. This is how you up it, upgrade yourself to a 4 and then a 5. Okay? So then when we turn back, this is where you're going to be writing your weekly lesson plan. So this was week 1, this was last week. So you probably haven't written anything in there and you probably just got your copy this week. Week 2 is coming. We are in week 2. You didn't have school on Monday, so you're going to cross that out. And then you're going to generally give an overview, just because you do this in the classroom and laying out your lesson plans. You're going to pull this out when you collaborate and you plan with your cooperating teacher or with your team if you're an intern. And you're going to generally write down what you're doing. And this is what every teacher does in their planner. They have a lesson planner book with little squares where you just write down what you're doing each day. That's what this is for this time period, okay? So you're going to write down your lesson plans for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So you know how it's all mapped out so that when you talk to your supervisor about when they can come observe you, you already know what you're teaching, okay, for that day. Plus you already know how it's going to coordinate, whether you can push a TPA, your one TPA video into that one day, because you only have that one TPA lesson to videotape and you have 4 observations. So you can pick one of those 4 to figure out how you're going to combine the 2 together. Okay, then this would be week 3. This is what I'm doing each day. And then we move into October and you're going to put the dates and the deadlines of things that you have, goals, same thing here, and then working into week 4. So you can project out and even begin planning from here to the end, if that will help you, which I would think it would. So, and then I think I added one for November, which we really don't need because we will be ending the end of October. So you have some extra pages here. But at the end are your compass maps in print. Okay, that's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Then next quad, you're going to be really focused in on rubrics. You're going to have to create rubrics, so we won't look at that as closely now. But UDL resources, barriers of learning. This is going to go over the barriers of learning and what that needs to be included and what that means inside your UDL lesson plan. Please look over this in great detail. These 2 down here, they are links to these 2 videos that will be extremely helpful for you. So please watch these 2 videos. Very, very helpful if you're confused, especially by UDL, but get a refresher on those. Your higher order thinking skills, be sure you understand what that means. As the assessment guide said, it mixes a couple of things together. It actually mixes Webb's depth of knowledge and Bloom's taxonomy together. So you're looking for a DOK 3 or 4. Some 2, but not any 1, not any DOK 1 really. And you're looking for these higher order thinking skills, which is above with analyze, evaluate, and create. Okay, and it gives you some examples of what you could do here, drawing connections among ideas, justify a stand or a decision, and produce new original work. And then of course the glossary, and then a final page for notes for you to take for class, right on the front and back. Okay. So we've covered that portion. So now let's take a look. We looked at the Cycle 1 Assessment Guide, Step 1. We looked at the CP1 Planner for Step 1, for adding your lesson plans in there, your summary of your lesson plans, and then Step 1 Compass Map. And now let's take a look at Canvas. What does this look like in Canvas? Okay, so I'm going to open that up now. I'm going to go to modules and I'm going to close these other, see how you can open and close them, make it a little more user-friendly so that you're not looking at so much information. I'm going to close all of these and I'm going to skim through. We've already done session 1, hard to believe. Here we are on session 2. These are all the information that you're going to need. So today's is an asynchronous class. In just a moment, I'm going to be, actually let me make this into the student view so it's not confusing to you and you aren't wondering what you are seeing. So it looks like what you see. Okay, so go back to modules. So I'm going to close these again, close these so that you can see and not have so much information open at the same time. I'm going into session 2, and as I said in the video I sent out this afternoon of the overview of Canvas, just so you kind of have an understanding of how it's being used in our course. Today is asynchronous, but what you're going to do is we're starting with the information as of today. Okay, so now you're going to need to do all of these things in this list in preparation for next week and for completing what you need to for step 1, the first portion, which is template A. So first thing you're going to see here is session 2, an overview. So it says this is what we're going to be doing. We're heading into step 1, cycle 1. These are your outcomes here. These are the TPEs that we're covering, which is developing as a professional educator and planning instruction. Then these are the things that you need to watch this week, required for this session. So you're going to watch Clinical Practice 1, Session 2 video. You're going to watch the video for the CP website. You're going to read the TPA assessment guide, which we kind of just went over as well. You're going to watch and use this tool for depths of knowledge question stems to help you with DOK and higher order thinking skills. Then you're going to read an article on asset-based teaching, how asset-based teaching can improve classroom behavior. And then just take a look at this funds of knowledge graphic that illustrates what it means to have funds of knowledge. How much lies like a big iceberg, how much lies underneath the water, and what you actually see above it. Okay, kind of giving you a heads up on that. So you take a look at that. So that's your overview. Next in the module is the attendance sheet. So be sure, if you haven't already, that you go in, and I see people who are already signing in for class. That was for last week, so nobody's signing in yet. They will soon. And then next is the TPA Cycle 1 Assessment Guide. What this is you're submitting your assignment by saying that I have printed or picked up my assessment guide, and I now have it either digitally or in print to use. And so then what you're going to do is you're just going to respond. You're going to say submit assignment, and then you're going to type in I have picked up my copy of the MS assessment guide. Great, and that's worth 5 points, and then I'm going to click submit, and I've submitted. Okay, so that will be done. Now I'm going to go to the next item in the module, which is classroom demographics. All this is a to-do. I need to start gathering information about my class. Use page 7 to 9 for multiple subject. This is you. Okay, you can ignore the other ones. That's for single subject and world language. Okay, and there's no points, nothing's required. You just need to do this. You're gathering this information, which we just went over. So the next one is the reading reflection. After completing your required reading for this week listed in Session 2 Overview, submit a reflection on what you learned from gathering information about your students and about the importance of knowing the assets and funds of knowledge each student brings to the class. So what you're doing is you're making sure you understand everything you need to know in the Session 2 Overview, and you've completed your research on gathering information about my students. And what I'm doing now is I'm reflecting on what I learned from gathering this information about my students. Okay, so I'm going to write down here. In gathering my information regarding my students for template A, I learned such and such about their assets and their funds of knowledge. Okay, and this is going to help you remember all the information you have there of the background of what an asset and a fund of knowledge are. Okay. All right, so then you're going to submit when you're finished typing that in. And I'm going to leave, and I'm going to move on to the next. This is template A. This is what you're responsible for as your big assignment for this week and the first portion of cycle 1. So you're going to submit template A after downloading the template, making a copy for yourself, titling it yours, and filling in the content as described in step 1 of your assessment guide. So let's take a look at what it looks like. I'm going to click on it. This was all listed already with 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the assessment guide, but now this is what the template looks like. Okay, so this is the same information you saw. So here it is, getting to know your students template. It's going to give you the directions, the same ones you saw in the assessment guide. Whole class. So when you save this, you're going to open it. This is a Word doc. You're going to save your very own, open it as a Word doc, and then you're going to type in here within these brackets here. So you're going to type in prior academic knowledge related to the specific content you plan to teach here in these brackets. Then you're going to type what the English language proficiency levels are of your students, and so on. And this is what we just went over in the assessment guide. So I'm going to go description of students' assets and learning needs, 2, contextual information for the class, 3, my focus students. Okay, focus student 1, focus student 2, and FS3. Okay, and that's the entire template A that you're going to need to complete. So you're going to download this, open it as a Word doc, and you're going to type in it. And then when you're all done, you are going to submit it here. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to choose my file, which I've saved to my desktop, or it's in my Google Drive, whichever you want to do. I'm going to add it here, and then I'm going to submit my assignment. I can't because I don't have one to submit. Okay, so I've submitted. Great. And the next is questions and comments for me. This is a great place for you to go to. You're doing just fine. All of you have been able to find me, it seems like, to ask me questions, and I'm feverishly trying to answer them as quickly as I can because I know you're stressed, but this is another place that you can do so. Okay, so heading back to modules, please be sure that you watch the video on the overview of Canvas, and I think I'm going to head on to that next. So we are done with step 1. That was the step 1 content of the class. Okay, so anything you need to review, rewind, watch it again, stop and start, grab what you need, and you know, review as much as you can. I can't say it enough. You need to understand what's in that assessment guide and what is expected of you. All right, so we're going to switch from the TPA to student teaching. How has your student teaching gone this last week? How are you feeling? I know it's been overload, and especially LiveBinder has been crazy. But these are things I want to be sure that you have done now when we're switching gears to the next component of CP. Remember, we have the TPA, which is one component. It's over here on this poster. See if I can move it over here. You've got your student teaching, you've got your TPA assessment, SMS, and class. So 4th component we are in right now. We just talked about the 2nd component, the assessment, the TPA, and now we're going to talk about student teaching. Okay, so student teaching, you have hopefully, and should have, if you haven't already, you need to by now share your LiveBinder with your supervisor. Okay, you need to have all 4 of your observation dates and times set. If you haven't yet, you need to get those all settled and set and typed into LiveBinder, into the recording sheet, which is that first pre-tab document, in either for traditional or intern students. Your lesson plans for last week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, should all be uploaded into LiveBinder by now. You need to check week 2 of the timeline. So in your LiveBinder, you're going to see your timeline for yourself and for your university supervisor, for your cooperating teacher, the 3-in-1 or the 2-in-1. Check and see what you should be doing this week, week 2 of the timeline. Be sure you understand how to use SIBME. I actually have it over here on the computer screen, the tutorial, if you haven't watched it yet. You need to set up SIBME now. You cannot add and upload your formal observation, which is probably this week or next, your very first one, into SIBME without knowing how to set it up. And your supervisor needs to set up a huddle for you, so be sure that's done. And then preparing for your formal observation. Remember that your daily lesson plans are the smaller template, and the template is located in LiveBinder for you under daily lesson plans. The formal observation is the UDL template lesson plan. You have to use that, and so that's what you are preparing for. So for example, say this week you have Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you have daily lesson plans using that daily lesson plan template, or perhaps you've been given approval by Dr. Jill Hamilton Bunch, our Associate Dean, to use your own template from your school. If you've been given approval to do so, then that's what you'd be using for those daily lesson plans. And then you have, say Friday is your first formal observation. So on Friday, you should have a UDL lesson plan completed for that, which you could also double to use for a TPA. But I say you have a little bit more time, and I might wait till the second or third to videotape my lesson to double it up with a TPA lesson, the TPA lesson, okay? So formal observation preparation, just what are you going to do for your first formal observation prep this week or the beginning of next? Okay, so now then let's look at some announcements I want to go over for you. We have a new LiveBinder tutorial for documents, and that is located over here. You can click on this link on the computer, and I gave that announcement today in, I shared an announcement in Canvas today that shows you how to save your LiveBinder documents. What I've had most concerns about is that you type into a document and you go back and it's gone, or it has someone else's information. And this video here will explain why that's happening and what you need to do to avoid that. It's completely possible. I know some of you are totally frustrated, and I'm super sorry that's happening right now with all the stress you've got going on. But this video will help you figure out how to fix that and make sure it doesn't happen anymore. Same thing with sharing your binder with your mentor. That video will help with that, and seeing what the mentor sees from their end. So mentors will be very encouraged by watching this as well. So just take a look. Be sure you've watched that, okay? There's also a new Canvas overview tutorial that I sent out today as an announcement. I had people asking me, I don't understand how Canvas is laid out. What am I supposed to do in here? I did go over it tonight in class as well, but that will be a refresher course on what Canvas, the purpose of it is, and how we use it during our course, during CP seminar. And then so to give you some Zoom recording updates. We've had many concerns from principals and district administrators with you guys, telling you guys that you cannot record students for your observations or for your TPA assessment. This is not correct, because we have a memorandum of use, a memorandum of understanding, an MOU with every district that we place students. So they're just probably not understanding that we already have that set up, and that has been in place prior to this, and it doesn't change just because we're in a virtual environment. So you are allowed to record the Zoom session or to record from your camera behind your head in a TPA recording. And there also can be permission slips that can be used if the district is asking you to still do permission slips, which is completely fine. Usually a district provides permission slips at the beginning of the school year to parents. You know, all those hundreds of documents, it feels like, that go out at the beginning of the school year. However they have done that, there's usually a document that is sent out related to videotaping and pictures being taken of students. So this is the document that you can use if you just get what their responses were to that. Make a sheet that says these are the students who can be recorded and these are the students that the parents said no way. Then you can just keep your list, turn off those cameras during recording, and you should be good to go. If you are like, I don't know how to get these permission slips signed, I would make them into a Google form, send it that way, or send it through email or a text, and then have them respond accordingly as to what they say, agree or disagree, and then start your list that way. Okay? So, and if you still have your principal or your district saying there's no way that this is going to be recorded, and they don't understand that we already have an MOU in place, it's just that they have so much going on, and this is such a new environment. There's a lot of these little pieces they didn't know were happening already behind the scenes. So then I can contact them, or Dr. Jill Hamilton Bunch has said she will to explain the situation, and that, you know, why that it's we have approval and it should work perfectly fine with safety and security. SIDME, where the video lessons are uploaded in, are FERPA compliant, so it's going to be safe and secure for students and for teachers. Okay. And then the last announcement, don't forget to go over here and give me and sign in to say that you are here this evening. I'll be taking attendance, okay? All right, to wrap that up, we're going to look at what needs to be done in Canvas for next week. We kind of went over that. I opened it for you a few minutes ago and we went through it one piece at a time. So what you're going to need to do is respond by text. That was in Canvas where you saw that you submit and get points for responding to say that you have your assessment guide. You're going to collect your demographics for template A. You don't have to submit anything for that, but there's just a reminder in there for you to do that in Canvas. You're going to complete the reading reflection, which is looking over and your overview and reading the assessment guide. And then template A, all that demographic is due on Sunday. So that is 6 days from now. It needs to be loaded into Canvas, completed, template A completed before midnight on Sunday. All right, so now what we would normally be doing, we would be going to questions. So we had 30 minutes for you doing the reading in the DLP with Module 2, 30 minutes for content for Step 1, and then we'd be having 30 minutes for questions. Since we don't have class together synchronously, you're going to be clicking on the table and clicking on a document that's shared that is going to provide an option to type in questions that I will respond to this evening as soon as you type them in, okay? So we are going to do that in one moment. On the table, you will find that link on the document that says Q&A right here. You're going to click on the link, and up will come the shared Google Doc to type in your questions, and I will be giving you responses. And I just encourage you to read other questions first to be sure that your question hasn't already been answered. This would be a helpful document too to look over if there are things that you're unsure of, and maybe it will be answered here as well. So thank you for this evening. Great job. I'm sorry we had to be asynchronous, but maybe it helped you enjoy your day a little bit more. The last item is that I have added in a one-time only Tuesday Q&A as well, Tuesday tomorrow at 3, so that in case anything was confusing for you today, you can come in and check it out and ask questions. Also, in the announcement, I created a link to Tuesday night CP1 class and Wednesday night CP1 class in case you want to come and watch the content again to see if that will help you. If something wasn't clear, just to watch it again, you're welcome to come. I'd love it if you'd come though at 5 because we'll be doing breakout groups at 4:30 from 4:30 to 5, so just don't sign on until 5. Okay? And hope you have a great day and hope you had a wonderful weekend. I know things are stressful, but I'm thinking about you and praying for you, and we're going to make it through it together, okay? So blessings to you, and we'll see you soon.